good way to start a meeting.
There's a refrain part. It's kind of like the chorus. I'll sing a verse, like 3 lines, and then everybody can join me on this. It goes, Tri-Valley Democratic Club, yes, indeed, that's for me. Oh, baby, just let me be part of the TVDC. Okay, that's your part. So I'll signal you, I'll go, everybody, when it's your part. So here we go. Ooh, wow. Don't want to be no lawyer. Don't want to be a supermodel. Don't want to be no astronaut or celebrity chef. I just want to be part of the TVDC. Everybody, Tri-Valley Democratic Club, yes indeed, that's for me. Oh baby, just let me be part of the TVDC. Wanna groom those local candidates, take on social ills, make the world safe for democracy and people like you and me. I just wanna promote social justice and equality. Okay, everybody now. Tri-Valley Democratic Club, that's for me. Oh baby, just let me be part of the TVDC. Third and last verse. Go to meetings every month. Work on good petitions and initiatives. Help with local resolution for the needy, not the greedy. Work with other fine folks on things that matter to me. Everybody now. Tri-Valley Democratic Club, that's for me. Big finish now. Oh, baby, just let me be part of the TVDC.
Good job, Ron.
Ron, I hate to break this to you, but the nature of Zoom is only one microphone works at a time. And
I know.
But
you can hear yourself.
Yeah.
You hear yourself singing, so that's the good part.
I'm wondering how this is going to come out on the YouTube channel.
Yeah, this is it. Well, we'll have to put it on, if it's any good, we'll just put it on Amazon and iTunes and all those other guys. That's right. Charge them $20 to download it.
May I point out we have a quorum?
We do, and we have a couple of minutes left before we get started. That's good. We are rocking and rolling.
And our first speaker is here, Cheryl Phippen. Welcome, Cheryl.
Cheryl.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Glad you can be with us. This will be wonderful. We're going to do, Cheryl, our Pledge of Allegiance, and then we'll have just a few brief announcements. And so we'll like to bring you on about 7:04, 7:05, if that's okay with you.
Sounds perfect. Thank you.
Okay. And there we go. We can see you now. So if you want, you can speak for, somewhere's in the neighborhood of 5 to 7 minutes or so, and then maybe we'll have some questions from the membership. Okay. All right. And here's our flag. Ready? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic
for
which it stands,
one
one
nation,
nation, under God,
indivisible,
and
with
justice
liberty and justice for all.
for all.
Someday.
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 Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Good. Well, this is the June meeting of the Tri-Valley Democratic Club, and it's wonderful. We have 117 members. We have a good quorum here tonight, and we're going to be hearing first from our representative for the candidate, Josh Harder. He's running for the House of Representatives, and that's in a district that includes 3 counties, Contra Costa, San Joaquin, and also Sacramento. So it's a close race as of the primaries. And we would like to hear from Cheryl Phippen, his representative. She'll be speaking for between 5 and 7 minutes. And then we can have questions from the membership. First, I'd like to read just a little paragraph on Josh. Josh and his wife, Pam, live in the Central Valley, where Josh grew up and delivered newspapers. He started early, enterprising. He's currently serving his 2nd term in the House, and he's working on behalf of families in the Central Valley, where he's fighting to protect our access to health care, create good-paying jobs, reform our broken immigration system. 3 major priorities for him. He's also focused on securing and growing the Valley's water supply, important thing. Josh is inspired by his parents, Mark and Linda, who met on a mission trip. So there's some good religious background here, and have lived a lifetime of service to their community. Josh picked up the family torch to bring the same spirit of service to Washington, D.C., where it's desperately needed. Cheryl, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Ron. Can I share my screen?
Okay. Jackie?
Yeah, let me go ahead and stand by a second. Let me make you a
Take your time.
Thank
Let's
you.
see. Let me remove the spotlight for a second and make co-host. Here we go.
All right, perfect. Let me see if I can get this going. And all right, can you see the slides there?
Yes.
Looks good.
Excellent, excellent. Well, thank you, Ron. It's really great to be here. I have to just say one thing, though. I'm not an official representative of the campaign. I'm just a longtime volunteer who feels very passionately about making sure that Harder gets sent back to Congress in 2022.
Good for you.
So just wanted to make that clear. So as you can see here, we will take a quick look at the district, close up and sort of the macro view. We'll look at the primary results to date. A little bit about, although Ron gave you a really good intro on Josh's background and message, I can add a few other things on that. I can talk a little bit about opportunities to volunteer like I'm doing. I can tell you a little bit about my experience this year in talking with voters. And then, of course, I'm happy to take any questions that you have. So first, I just want to say that I'm also a member of the Democratic Club, Wellstone Democratic Renewal Club here in the East Bay. And I'm also a leader of a small group of activists called Indivisible Berkeley Elections Alums. And as I said, I started volunteering for Josh Harder during his first run for Congress in 2018. And one thing that I sometimes say on the doors is, if I'm talking to a voter, I'll say, you know, when I first started volunteering for Josh, I thought he looked really good on paper. I thought that he would probably turn out to be a good representative. and he's exceeded every expectation. Everything, he's just done a fantastic job for his current district. So that's why I continue to volunteer. So here you can see basically the three Central Valley races that, you know, we've heard a lot about that are closest to us. Obviously, California 9 is what we're going to be talking about tonight. That's the northernmost district. And then just below that is 13. These are all slightly, so in some cases, very radically redrawn maps. 13 is a very different district than the old District 10. And then below that, we have 22, which is where David Valadao is the Republican representative. And you can see the blue shade there. So where we live is over in the really dark blue shade. And that's why we need to move out to the east to really be effective. And the lighter blue means, it just means that that indicates a voter registration pattern that leans somewhat to the left. In the case of District 9, it's a D+7 or 8, same thing for 13. And actually with the redistricting, the District 22 became more favorable for Dems with a D+10 rating. And then if we look a little bit closer at the new California 9, it's very similar to, actually I don't know the number of the old district, but the old San Joaquin district. I think it's Contra Costa. It's mostly San Joaquin with a little bit of Contra Costa, and I believe it's Stanislaus to the east. So this area is currently represented by Jerry McNerney, who I'm sure you know is retiring this year. And with Josh's current and disappearing California 10 district being split into 3 parts with the redistricting, he chose to run in this seat in California 9, particularly after hearing of McNerney's. He wasn't going to be running here if McNerney hadn't retired.
Yeah.
But the thing is that with the redistricting, see there at the bottom, at the south is Tracy and Manteca. Those were parts of his old California 10. And so those folks know him. But the rest of this district, literally, many of the people that I've talked to just have never even heard the name, ever. It's just like a whole new, it's a whole new and large district to introduce him to. And I think that's especially acute in Stockton, the biggest city. Not only have people not heard of him, but this is a city where the Democrats lost the mayor's seat in 2020. And also the Latino population in South Stockton swung 15 points towards Trump. So those are not good trends going into this election. So when you hear people say, oh, well, Josh is the incumbent in this district, and even the election results have that little asterisk next to his name, little star next to his name, which indicates that he's the incumbent. He's the incumbent in 30% of the district. And we really have a lot of work to do to keep this district blue in 2022. So here are the unofficial primary results. You can see it was a fairly crowded field. And these results are from Friday, late Friday. They seem to be, changing a little bit each day. It seems to be taking forever. And so these are not certified, but it's pretty clear that Josh Harder will most likely be the top vote getter, and Republican Supervisor Tom Patty will be in the number 2 slot going into the November election. So I think if you add up these numbers, which I've done for you, the totals show a close contest ahead. If you add up all the Dem votes here, you get 25,000. If you add up the Republicans and there's one no party preference, you get 23,000. It was a very low primary turnout of only 14%. It's as we look at this next slide, you can see well, first of all, on the left, you can see the map of the district and where the Democratic registrations are and where the Republican registrations are. And then if you look at the slide on the upper right, you can see the number of registered Dems, which is about 163,000 in the district. Just to the right of that, you can see how many of them showed up for the election. The registered Republicans at 107,000, and the no party preference almost as large at 105,000. So it's pretty clear to me that for us to win, well, for Harder to win, we'll need to not only turn out Democrats, but persuade a significant number of those no party preference folks to vote for Josh. So Ron touched on this a little bit, and I apologize for the left photo looks great, but I tried to find a picture of Josh and his new baby, and it just came off of Facebook, and so it's a terrible picture, but at least you can see Lily there, you can see Josh with his ballot in hand. So as Ron said, Josh is a 5th generation from the Valley, from a family of peach growers in Manteca originally. As I mentioned before, he was inspired after the 26th, first of all, he was shocked after the 26th election, and then he was inspired to run for Congress to protect healthcare coverage because of the pre-existing conditions of his brother David, who he recognized immediately would be affected in the Trump administration. And his home base has been Turlock. He recently moved to Tracy to be living in the district that he's running in, even though that's not a requirement. So just to highlight a few legislative priorities that he's been working on, we usually lead off the conversation with, Josh is aware of high gas prices, and he's working on supply chain issues and, state and local legislation around gas prices. It's better to just sort of get that out there front and center. So just to quickly go through, I mentioned healthcare. He did bring federal funding to the Tracy International Park of Commerce, creating, I think, 500 jobs. He'd like to do more of that. He also found federal funding for Modesto's Youth Navigation Center, helping homelessness among youth. Done a lot of work with McNerney on veteran stuff, water storage, transportation, particularly the Valley Link, climate change, especially what farmers need to be equipped to handle it. And I just say finally that Josh is a reliable vote for legislation put forth by the leadership. And I've highlighted those two, the job creation and the homelessness, because I usually bring those up when I'm talking to voters, and those seem to have a lot of resonance. So what can you and your club do to help? The campaign adage is doors and dollars, and I'm here talking about doors. So I'm basically going to invite you to join me as volunteer canvassers. There's also opportunities for phone banking. And if you go to his website and click on volunteer, I could put this in the chat, but you'll see a page like this, which has registration for various upcoming events. And I would just say that the campaign does a really good job of welcoming and training volunteers. And I'll be heading out this Saturday to start work for the general. And I hope that some of you can join me either then or in the near future. We in the East Bay have also had a close relationship with the Tracy Democratic Club since 2018. This is a picture of them with Josh back in 2018. And they've supported him from day one. And they also work really hard on down ballot local races where they have been slowly but steadily turning the city council bluer. I think critically in this election, we've been canvassing with them in Mountain House, which is the town right across the freeway there. which was, it's a relatively new community, and it was in McNerney's district. So those voters haven't heard of Josh either, even though they live right across from Tracy, where everybody heard of Josh. And so in conclusion, I would say that, 2022 seems to be shaping up to be a tough year for Democrats. And I think we'd all agree that we need to win this District 9 to have any hope of keeping the House. You can see in the right-hand photo, this is a photo of a launch in Turlock in 2018. And the first thing I noticed there is that there were literally hundreds of volunteers showing up on a regular basis from the Central Valley and the Bay Area to volunteer for the campaign. And then conversely, on the left-hand side, you see our little group. I'm to the far right there. Our little group from Berkeley, which I think was all the canvassers that day in a recent get out the vote effort in Stockton. So although we haven't seen large numbers of volunteers yet, there's still time to get engaged and make a difference. And the Harder campaign is doing a good job of recruiting local volunteers, but they will need a lot of help from out of the district, people like you and me. And then just on a personal note, I want to just say that, first of all, it's just been wonderful to be canvassing again in 2022 after not doing it for 2 years. It's so great to, meet with voters face to face and in person. And I've spoken to many of them who had never heard of Josh and were very grateful for the information. So that's, Ron, that's the end of my presentation. I'm going to stop sharing the screen and take questions if you have any.
Well, Cheryl, that was a wonderful, comprehensive presentation with very nice graphics and well spoken. So
thank you.
At this point, if you would like, we're opening the floor to questions. We'll have you go ahead, the members, and raise your hand in the chat symbol, and we'll have Jackie select the question people. Would you like to go ahead and do that for the first one, Jackie?
Yes, first in line is Mary Perner. Mary, if you can unmute yourself.
Hi, well, thank you for coming, and that was a very interesting presentation. I have a number of questions, but at the top, you say that you're still involved with the Tracy Dems. My friend Teal and I had regular canvassing gigs in Tracy right up until the COVID shutdown. We roughly a little over 2 years, I think. We would do it at least once a month, sometimes twice a month. And we enjoyed it. We'd like to do it again. And I was curious about the Dems involvement, that particular office. Is that where the training takes place?
Well, thank you for that question, Mary. And I was looking you earlier on the Zoom, and I thought, I recognize that person, and now I know why, because I'm sure we've been at the same campus in Tracy. So yeah, the Tracy Dems, at the beginning of the pandemic, they closed their office where you and I were used to meeting there on Central Avenue, and for Get Out the Vote in 2020, some of us drove out and we did like lit drops out of parks. So they've been doing basically canvassing out of local parks for until right now. And we just got a note from Robin Cole of the Tracy Dems that they are reopening their office. That's very exciting. And they actually found a space in the same building. So that would be for the Tracy canvases. I'm assuming that I don't know this yet, but I'm kind of assuming that the Mountain House canvases, because they've been running both Tracy and Mountain House, I'm kind of assuming that the Mountain House will still be launched from a very nice park there in Mountain House. It has very nice restrooms and it's a good setup for them. So we'll just have to wait and see how they go forward with that.
Well, that kind of leads into a couple of my other questions. Sorry, everybody else with your hand up. The Mountain House sounds really interesting, and it's somewhat closer to Livermore, which is where we live.
Right.
And so how do we connect with and meet the people in the park who are gathering up the canvassers.
Yeah, you know what?
Will there be information in the chat or something?
Yeah, I am. Yeah, for that, because I looked on Mobilize and I didn't see any Tracy Dem events listed yet. I think they're taking a little bit of a break after the primary. But I am going to put my email in the chat as well as my cell phone. And if you want to share that with, if you want to share your information with me, Mary, I'd be happy to make sure that you get that information as soon as I do.
Okay, well, I will copy your Gmail and send you my information and
Sounds
my partners.
Good. Sounds good. Yeah. Perfect.
And then now with gas prices as high as they are, and that we're traveling a little further now into the Central Valley, and it's going to cost more, will there be carpools organized?
You know, I'll tell you what our group does. I mean, certainly from Berkeley, we organize carpools. I would suggest that your group, I could even, you know, when we connect on email, I can give you the, there's a really simple carpool app that we use. And so when we basically let people know that we're going to be going on a canvas, we have a link in there so they can sign up for a carpool. And that's something you might want to consider doing for your group. It's just an easy way to organize it.
Great.
Okay, great. Good. 2 more questions.
From me?
No, not for Mary. Mary,
let's have someone else.
You've had enough, Mary.
I
do want to say, Ron, real quick before I move on to the next questioner, we can go ahead and take those events and post them on our calendar, and our calendar gets published to a broader, like, go get out the vote calendar, and we can definitely get the word out and post it, and maybe even coordinate some carpools from Livermore with a vote.
That sounds great.
Yeah, that's wonderful, because this is a critical race right now. You know, there's 220 Democrats and 209 Republicans.
Whether we have any problems with our solar. So go.
Okay, Ellis, could we mute?
Yeah, Sharon, just tell them to wait a minute.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
The front doorbell at the same time. Real quick questions. One is, in Contra Costa, aside from Mountain House, are there any other cities in CD9? Because I couldn't tell from that map.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that.
Stockton?
Well, Stockton isn't in Contra Costa.
Well, Stockton is in San Joaquin, yeah.
Oh, sorry.
So is Brentwood in there, Discovery Bay? Are they part of it?
Yeah, you know, I'm looking at the same map you are, and I don't know that either.
Okay, I'll look at other maps. The second question, and maybe this is more crucial. You may not know this. Jerry McNerney was the vice president of this club. He's a young boy, and so is Eric Swalwell. Right. And I would like to know, has Josh Harder been able to hook up with Jerry McNerney's campaign? Because his campaign structure is still there. He's got, my recollection, about 12 years in Congress, most of the time representing that, well, the last 10 years representing that physical district. And if it hasn't, I could personally contact Jerry McNerney. I ran his campaign for over a year, and ask if there's some way that those people who are involved in Jerry McNerney's campaign can get involved in Harder's campaign, or at least have access to his mail lists, which are a crucial thing. So you have my contact information already. We've spoken on the phone. So if you can answer that question and get back to me, this may do some good. And the third thing is there's something called the Marsh Creek Democratic Club. They're a fairly new club, and they're out in Brentwood and Discovery Bay, which is why I was asking that first question. I could probably get you or somebody else into their meeting so that you can make that pitch, and they are physically closer to the target area than the Tri-Valley Dems. So,
Right. Well, those are great points, Ellis. Just quickly on McNerney, thank you for that background. I think it's a great idea for you to contact him. My understanding, and understand that I'm only a volunteer, so I only know so much. But
Yeah.
my understanding is that, first of all, McNerney is not going to be endorsing until after the election is certified. He didn't want to put his foot on the scale for the primary. Number two, I have heard that he is very supportive of Josh, and they're working behind the scenes. So, but I think if you were to contact, McNerney's campaign about that, I think that would probably be the most helpful way to approach that.
okay, I will try to do that, and I have your contact information.
Yeah.
So
And I'd be delighted to talk to any other groups that you can get me into a meeting for. Thank you.
I have to go. There's somebody at the front door.
Okay, next questionnaire.
Becky Davies.
Yeah, hi. Thank you for your presentation. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I can.
Okay. Well, you answered my first question about endorsements. And I must say that given his lead against the other Democrats, I'm quite disappointed that he's not going to endorse Josh.
Well, no, I didn't say that he's not going to endorse. We expect him to endorse after this election is certified.
After the primaries?
After the primary.
Yeah, I think he should endorse before the primary.
That would have been nice, but people who know Jerry, the reaction has been, oh, that sounds like Jerry. So,
okay.
Yeah.
And that was my question, which you answered. And my second comment is I'm also in Livermore and would be very interested in joining a carpool to come out and help you. So whoever is organizing that, here I am.
I got your name.
Great.
Down.
Well, I think Mary's going to be contacting me, and then maybe she can help facilitate getting this all organized up.
Great.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
What do we look like in
my,
terms of
I'm putting
hands?
my email address in the chat.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. We have two more questions out there. First from Alan, and then followed by Brody.
Okay, let's do those both.
I don't really have a question. It's more of a comment. You mentioned that in Stockton, the Hispanic vote is very, very strongly switched to Trump.
Yeah.
And it's something the Democratic Party should be aware of and do something about. And that's that conservative groups have purchased a ton of Hispanic speaking stations in those areas, and their programming makes Fox News look liberal. And it's really having an effect. And unless the Democratic Party counteracts it, there's a big problem.
Couldn't agree more.
That's all I had.
And then Brody, if you could unmute yourself. Thank you.
Yes, I wanted to know if you all are organized with Bay Area Coalition. There's about 15 organizations, mainly indivisible groups, also swing left, that go out to the Central Valley every weekend. One of my board members from the Sangamon Valley Democratic Club goes out, I think it may be in Hanford, not Stockton. They go out and try to register, voters for the Democratic Party, but they might be also interested in, in helping Josh Harder get elected. And also I wanted to mention they use Valley Link. They take trains to that area. Are there trains that go to that area that might be easier for carpooling?
I haven't taken the train to Stockton, but I think there are trains to Stockton.
Okay.
And to your first comment, yes, I am very aware of the Bay Area Coalition. my little group as well as Wellstone are not members of it, and they are not supporting work in CD9 this year. For some reason, they feel like Josh is an incumbent and doesn't need any help, and I think that's very misguided.
That's too bad. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
The ACE train goes all the way, I think, from San Jose up through Pleasanton, through Livermore, over the Altamont. I don't know what stops in Tracy it makes, but it does end up in Sacramento.
Good news. Okay, if that's all of the questions, why don't we go ahead and make a vote on whether we want to endorse Josh Harder's candidacy for CA9. This is an important race. Of the 6 races in the areas that our TVDC club is most influential in paying attention to, this is by far the closest race. Most of the other ones, the Democrats have a 3-to-1 lead. Right now, he's given the results through Friday night at 39%, and Tom Petty, the Republican, is at 28%. So this is close, and at a 14% turnout, there is a lot of swing votes out there. So if anybody wants to spend some time in a critical race for the House of Representatives, this is a district that deserves our attention. So at this point, do we have a motion to have a vote for endorsement?
I so move.
Okay. John, do we have a second?
John was
Second.
the first and Mary's the second. Or was that
Okay.
Brody or Mary?
That's Mary.
Mary, thank you.
That's Mary. Okay. Jackie, do we want to do this online or do with a message, or do we want to do a voice vote?
I would like to make a motion to do a voice vote since we are not voting no, so we can easily do a voice vote with this one, I think.
Okay. Now, do we want to raise hands to make it easier, or did we want to speak all those in favor and then all those opposed?
I would say the latter. Make
Okay.
it easy.
All right. Well, then all those in favor of the TVDC endorsing the candidacy for Josh Harder for California House of Representative District 9, the new district, say aye.
Aye.
All
Aye.
those opposed? All those abstaining?
Abstain.
Okay. Well, we passed with one abstention. Very good. Okay. And thank you very much, Cheryl Phippen, for a wonderful presentation. And I hope that we're able to generate a good amount of support. And Mary, we thank you for stepping up in terms of asking good questions and also helping to organize the precincts and the transportation. Okay.
Well, thank you, Ron, for the time. It was great to be here and meet your group, and hope to see you in Stockton soon.
All
Good
right.
night.
Very
Bye,
good.
Cheryl.
Good night. Okay. Let's move on to the next item in the agenda, which is a review of the results from the primary election on June 7th. So I had mentioned that we do have 6 districts that we're paying attention to in the US Congress for House of Representatives. And I just briefly mentioned that Josh is leading 39 to 28% in District 9. I'm going to quickly review. If anybody has any comments, they can add them at the end of each presentation of the percentages here. Eric Swalwell, as with the others, have done quite well in terms of the primaries, advancing to the general. Eric got 63.6% according to the State of California Secretary of State as of Friday, while his main competitor, Allison Hayden, had 10.3%. So that looks pretty solid. Any comments? Okay, that's District 14. Again, these are new districts. District 12 is Alameda County, as was District 14. Barbara Lee, 87.7%.
Yeah.
Look at this. This is a strong Democratic candidate from Berkeley who's carrying on the tradition of good Berkeley radicals. Stephen Slauson is a Republican, 5.3%. That one looks pretty solid. Okay. All right. 10th District, a new one. This is Alameda and Contra Costa County. Mark DeSaulnier, 84.9%.
Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome, Mark. Michael E. Kerr is a Green Party. There's no Republicans at 15.1%. So that looks pretty solid. That's good prospects for the general. 17th, again, new. This is Alameda and Santa Clara. Ro Kahana, the Democrat at 66%, many of us know, from the East and the South area. And Ritesh Tandon, the main Republican contender, at 25.3%. Okay, and the sixth and final one of major interest for us, mostly Contra Costa and Alameda County. This one is Contra Costa and Solano County. John Garamendi. Our old friend John has 63.3% of the primary, with his Republican challenger Rudy Resile at 20.6. Again, a 3-to-1 margin. So most of these are 3-to-1 margins, except for Josh, who is in need of our help. Let's take a look here at the candidates that TVDC endorsed, our close to home candidates. And once again, we're doing quite well. And our batting average for endorsement looks pretty solidly to be in line with the general voting public and good sense. All right. The most recent ones that we've had was Cheryl Cook Callio. This is for the Alameda County Board of Education District 7. Last meeting, we endorsed her and she got 53.2%. Kate Dow, 26, Eric Dilley, 20. So this is somewhat contested, but looks pretty solidly for Cheryl at this point, but she can use some help. A local wonderful lady, and also a member of the club. At that same meeting on the 16th of May, we had 3 of the 4 main candidates for Zone 7 flood control and water conservation. And they took 3 of the 4 top positions. There will be 4 elected. Dennis Gams had 27% of the primary. Sarah Palmer, 22.6. Olivia San Juan, 22.5. Well, we endorsed all of them. And Dawn Benson, our good friend and club member, had 21.8%. So she's in position to be the 4th member that gets elected. So those look pretty solidly in the Democratic side and consistent with our endorsements. Let's move on to the 10th District, House of Representative Mark DeSaulnier. We endorsed him. I said 85 versus 15, very solid. 12th District, Eric is doing well, 63-10. RBK, Rebecca Bauer Cahan, doing well in the 16th District. She got 100% of the local vote from us, and she has 66.6 versus 33.3 for Joseph Ruby. So she's 2-to-1 with 2/3 of the vote for the 16th District. So Rebecca looks pretty solidly on track. Sean is going to need a little bit of help. Sean Kumagari, who's a Democrat, a wonderful military man, a friend of the club, a member of the club. He got in the 20th District, he got our endorsement. In the 20th District, he got 23.9%, with Liz Ortega ahead of him, 32.2%. So Sean could use some help, some volunteering. We're going to put Sean's contact information up into our chat. If we could do that, Jackie, that would be good. Let's see if we can muster some support and some volunteers for Sean. There are 2 other very close people in this race. Jennifer Eaton at 22.2%, and Joseph Greer at 21.7%. So Sean's in a three-way tie essentially for second. So he's going to need some help.
Ron,
Yes.
that's the top two primary. So in November, it's going to be Sean and Liz Ortega.
Most likely, that's right.
But the results aren't final until like the first week in July.
July 15th, they finalize them at the end of the day, correct?
Oh, okay.
John?
Ron, I'd like to point out Buffy Wicks out of Richmond. It's always nice never to have an opponent. I believe her last official vote count I saw was like 100%. That's pretty cool.
Isn't that wonderful? Yeah,
and she's a good Dem and a good supporter of labor.
Oh, we love to hear that. She's the 14th district. That's a state assembly in Alameda and Contra Costa County. John, you are up to date on this stuff. She was unopposed and got 100% of the vote. Isn't that wonderful? That's right. She should join us on the beach there in Maui.
And Dean Wallace works for her, our former president.
And Dean works for her? Oh, that's
He's her
good.
regional director. So he's her number one guy.
All right.
Yeah,
He's also
I had
a member of the
chance
club.
to see Dean Thursday night for the Eden Council fundraiser in Hayward. That's why I like to go. Meet a lot of people there, a lot of old friends.
That's wonderful. It's good to hear that Dean is active again, and good for Buffy. 100% sounds solid. Okay, we also endorsed on our March meeting Yesenia Sanchez for Sheriff Corner of Alameda County, and she's doing well.
Right.
52.8% versus Gregory Ahern, the incumbent sheriff. Some say the bad guy. 31.2% with John Walker at 15.9%. So there's some contention here. We may want to help Yesenia on this one also.
I might also add, Ron, that thank goodness we got a new sheriff in town in Alameda County. But Pamela Price is also running for DA, and she came in at about 39%. It would be a good idea to link Price with the new sheriff, as they're both progressives, and with the reactionary DA again, we won't get the results we need on criminal justice reform.
And Ron,
Yeah.
Picking up for Pamela
Ron
Price.
Ahern conceded to Yesenia. He conceded.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I just
That's-
wanted to say that there are a couple races that are done deals now. Yesenia, that race has been conceded. Cheryl Cook Callio is the winner. She does not need to move on to anything in November. That's it.
Great.
And then we have some other victories that I'll mention later once Ron's done. Thank you.
Okay. Well, this is good news again. Good for Cheryl. Good for Yesenia. LK Monroe spoke to us on 3/21/22 also, running for superintendent of schools in Alameda County. She has 46.8%. And the other candidate who we did not endorse but did speak was Alcie Castro. Yeah, she has 53.2%. So those interested in education in Alameda County, OK Monroe, could use a little help.
At this point, it's going to be one or the other. The campaign is over. There's nothing we can do to help that candidate because there are just two candidates, and one of them is going to get more than the other, unless by some miracle they got the exact same number, but that would be a miracle.
So,
But right now it looks like LC is going to take that seat.
Yeah.
Yeah, the last I saw it was pretty close. I think there was an update on Wednesday was the last one. And then Ron, the other thing that Yesenia's campaign is asking folks, if they have any resources left, she still does, her campaign still has some bills coming in.
Okay.
And if anybody would like to help her campaign, she's still accepting donations to help close out those final costs for her campaign.
Okay, good information. And the final one in terms of our endorsements, we did have 2 candidates for the district attorney of Alameda, Pamela Price and Terry Wiley, both speak to us. Neither of them got the 60% endorsement for the minimum. Pamela had 53.8%, and she's currently at, as of Friday, she had 43.2% versus Terry Wiley at 27.1%. So is this a winner take all and no general also for the district attorney, as was the superintendent of schools?
No, it'll be the top 2. So it looks like Pam Price is the number 1 and Terry Wiley is the number 2. So we do have an opportunity, since we did not endorse for DA, we could interview both of those folks again and make a decision to endorse for the general.
I think that's a good idea. Let's go ahead and contact them. Did you want me to do that, or would you like to do that?
I could do that unless Ellis preferred to do it as the political director.
I haven't got contact information, but there was one comment that Ron referred Pamela Price as the progressive candidate. I'd like to point out that Terry Wiley is the DA that prosecuted the Riders case over 10 years ago that put a bunch of Oakland policemen in jail. So don't portray him as the conservative candidate. It's just not true.
I don't think I did.
And also, quite a few of the congressmen like Terry Wiley.
Yeah.
He's got quite a few endorsements.
Well, he's got Rebecca and Sean and Eric all endorsing him.
Oh, good. Okay.
And I believe Mary she has her hand up very patiently. I think she has a question or comment.
Not that patient.
Oh.
Okay, first of all, I forgot how it's spelled, but I think the name is Elise. And secondly, I have a question. Wasn't that race, if you get above 50%, then you've won it?
This is my understanding and Jackie's understanding. So Elise,
hasn't Elise done that?
ALYSE is at 53.2% now.
So she has won it.
So she has won it if those results hold up. And
correct.
There's over 95%.
I also wanted to add that Livermore Indivisible, I think she was in one of our forums, and we liked her, and then we kind of got to know her a little more and watched her progress and progress and progress. And by election time, several of our members were campaigning for her and canvassing, and she became we didn't endorse, we don't do that much, but she became our favorite.
Well, that's wonderful that both for superintendent of schools and district attorney, we seem to have 2 strong, good candidates. Okay, very good. All right. So any other comments on our endorsed candidates?
This is Jackie. I'm sorry. It's Richard. Go ahead. I see your hand up. Please, sir.
Jackie, if you had something to say, I'm happy to defer to you first.
I just wanted to mention of the Central Committee's endorsed candidates, the same as ours, Yesenia, Cheryl. There's also Alex Lee for State Assembly, and that victory looks imminent. Finished first, and it looks like will advance to November against the Republican. And then Aisha Wahab, I don't know if that was mentioned. She is, it looks like may advance to November with a strong showing. And then Rebecca Kaplan of the State Senate finished first. And then 2 important measures, one in the city of Alameda Measure B and Measure C in Oakland were both victories, as well as our own Measure A in Livermore in the special election. So thank you for everybody that worked on those campaigns.
Yes, indeed. So the ACDC did have a really good, strong predictive capability in terms of who they endorsed. In addition to the TVDC, we've got some psychics here, or is that people with good judgment? In any case, yeah, the ACDC did endorse Yesenia Sanchez, Cheryl Cook Callio, and the 4 Water District people who are leading Zone 7, Palmer, Benson, Gams, and Samson. So, so far it looks pretty good. Looks like things are going our way in general. Let's see, we've talked about the Congress. How about State Assembly? We talked that Sean is in a tight battle. And we've mentioned that in Alameda and Contra Costa, Buffy Weeks is outstanding unopposed. Rebecca doing very well with a 2-to-1 lead. 18th District is Alameda and San Francisco. These again are new territories. Mia Bonta, a Democrat, was like Buffy, unopposed. So she got 100% of the vote. As the ACDC endorsed Alex Lee in Alameda and Central and Santa Clara. This is the 24th districts, 38%, and Bob Brunton, 21%. The rest of the Democrats are 40%. The other Republicans are 0. So if the rest of the Republicans go for Lee, we're in pretty good shape there. 11th district, again, new Contra Costa, Sacto, Solano counties. Lori Wilson, essentially 2-to-1, 63 over Jenny Callison, 35. And the final one is our friend Tim Grayson for Contra Costa County in the new 15th State Assembly District, 68% to 31%. So that's looking solid. Once again, in the State Assembly, we have all 80 of the candidates are up for election. It's a 2-year term in the State Assembly with a 12-year limit and a salary of $115K. So they better earn that for us. That's the same salary as the State Senate. There's one interesting State Senate district for us. That's number 10. This is in Alameda and Santa Clara County. Lily May, the Democrat, has 33%. Another Democrat, Aisha Wahab, what we were talking about earlier, Jackie mentioned the ACDC endorsement, 30%. So that's very close. Lily May versus Wahab, 31%. Third, Paul Pimentel at 21%. Again, $115K salary, a 4-year term to the State Senate, the only local one that's up for election for this cycle. Okay, any general comments on the election or the state races? Ellis?
See a couple first questions from Robin, and then Jeff had their hand up first. If we could start with Robin.
Thanks.
Good.
I just had a question. It feels like a lot of people who were present when Terry and Pamela spoke to us are present now. And I was curious if you would consider taking a straw vote now to see if you really need to bring both of those people back.
I would think we would want to notify our members and give them an opportunity to participate. That's my opinion. This is Jackie, the secretary.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree with the notify. I'm just curious if you need, did we not record it?
We did record the original vote, but nobody made 60% threshold under our bylaws at the time.
Right. So I guess my question is, if you were to vote again with 2 people, based on both of them having spoken to us very eloquently, I thought they both did a great job of speaking to us. Do you think we would have what's necessary? I'm just thinking it would matter a great deal to Pamela Price, I know, to have that endorsement. And I have been supporting her on Twitter quite a bit. So it just crossed my mind to ask.
And that's a good question, but you know, the history of the club is to not do straw votes, but to actually have representatives or the candidates themselves there and actually take a full vote. So I would prefer that we continue with that tradition.
Thank you for giving me a moment to just voice the question. Thanks.
Yeah, it's a nice idea, but I think that we want to keep our slate on the conservative side on in terms of doing votes. We have some additional questions and comments concerning primary election results and impact on the general election coming up on November 8th. Ellis?
I was next.
Jeff is next.
In front of me.
Jeff is next.
I'm sorry, Jeff was next, then Richard, then Ellis.
Oh, good.
They show in order in my screen. Thank you.
Oh, good for you. I don't have that screen.
Ron, I have a general question for you concerning the congressional races. I know
Yes.
that California lost a seat with the redistricting. Do you know who is bumped out in the state?
You know, I don't know who is that. I can look into that for you if you like, Jeff.
Yeah, I'm hoping it's Kevin McCarthy.
Wouldn't that be nice? Okay.
You can only hope and pray.
I think you already heard the answer to that question, Jeff, and it was Jerry McNerney. And that Harder already had a seat. Moving into McNerney's territory, at least 70% of the district, according to the lady who made the earlier presentation. So in the game of musical chairs, which is really what we're talking about, Jerry gave up his seat. And the question is, can we hold on to, I think that we had 19 of the seats in the state. Can we hold on to those and maybe pick up any? But I think that's the answer to the bump. Ron, I wanted to comment on Contra Costa results. The big race in Contra Costa was Dinah Becton, the DA, and she beat Mary Knox by a full 8 points. This was a fight between the policemen's union and Dinah Becton, the only DA to put away a policeman for killing somebody in California history, as far as I can tell. So that was a big race. The other big race in Contra Costa is for Supervisorial District 4, which is out in Clayton, Concord, Walnut Creek, that kind of area. And right now, the results show that the leading candidate is Deborah Allen, who is the former chair of the Contra Costa Republican Party. And the second place is a guy named Ken Carlson, who is on the Pleasant Hill City Council and is a retired policeman and is gay. And of course, is out gay. So that seems to be a big race shaping up in Contra Costa, but only people who live in that district will get to vote there. Going into November, there aren't any other hot races in Contra Costa. There is, in fact, only one really hot race in our territory, and that's Sean Kumagai versus Liz Ortega. And, well, we've taken a position on that one. So that's kind of a report from Contra Costa side of the county line.
And that was wonderful. Yeah, that's pretty inclusive, Ellis. That's great. Okay, any additional comments?
Richard has a comment. And
Thanks,
Mary
Jackie.
just popped in after that.
Good.
Thanks, Jackie. I know we're like over time on our agenda, so I'll try and keep it short, but to just clarify the 50% plus one thing, the rule is that in non-party preference elections, so nonpartisan elections, which tend to be countywide and municipal elections, 50% plus one applies. So if you have multiple candidates running and one candidate gets 50% plus one, as we saw in the sheriff's race, as we saw with Cheryl's race, then there is no general election. They just win outright. State elections still are partisan. There's Democrats and there's Republicans and there's independents. So those, regardless of, even if you get 50% plus one, it will go to a general election. I also just wanted to mention one race that I don't think we endorsed in, but might be sort of relevant to us, which is Steve Glazer, who is, I think, a couple of us is state Senate representative, state senator. It looks like he will not be successful in advancing to the general for his controller race, which I'm personally very happy about. And I also just want to touch upon Yesenia, who I think this is like, to me, this is the most exciting result of the entire slate. This is an office that has not had a challenger in 36 years. Greg Ahern has been there for 18 years, 16 years, I believe, uncontested each time. And the one time he had a challenger, look what happened. So I think there's a lesson to be learned between Elisa's race with Yesenia's race, that like, even though the power of incumbency and the power of like corporate backing isn't really the be all end all. I've been getting mailers, as I'm sure like a lot of folks have been, like 2 mailers a day, sometimes from Kate Dow's campaign against Cheryl, yes, from Greg Ahern's campaign for Shara, and neither of them ended up even making it to a general. So I think we can be proud of the work that we're doing, of voters in the East Bay being informed this election cycle and mobilizing and turning out when it mattered. I know we had low turnout in general, but it swung our way this time in quite a couple of races. The last thing I'll just say is, I know there's some discussion on Pamela Price, Terry Wiley, the DA's general going ahead. If we did want to bring in both candidates, I know Evan mentioned that, oh, Christy, I'm sorry, maybe you're right. I'm sure you're probably right. Maybe it was just a simple majority. But for Pamela Price's and Terry Wiley's race going into the general, Evan mentioned this, I'll also mention it. We both have the contact info for both of those candidates and those campaigns. If we were interested in bringing them in, happy to reach out. That's all, thanks.
And Mary Perner is our last commenter on this issue.
Okay. First of all, I read somewhere that Yesenia is the first woman sheriff in Alameda County in, I think the number was 140 years of history. So thank you, Christy, 170 years. So it's truly, truly exciting. And then although we didn't endorse her, Liz Ortega, who is leading Sean Kumagai in AD 20, is a Democrat. And so if Sean fails to win, fails to get the votes, we're still in a situation, a decent situation, I would think. I don't know her background, but I just wanted to mention that.
Good. Okay, any additional comments or questions concerning election results?
I'll make a quick one, Ron, because I do know Liz Ortega pretty well, because I was a delegate at the Alameda County Labor Council for many years, where she was secretary treasurer. She's highly qualified. She's a solid progressive. Obviously, she's backed by labor. She's got a good reputation. I've never heard a single thing against her in all my years. So that's some background on her. That's all I want to pass along.
Appreciate the input. That's valuable personal information. So it looks like we've got a couple of positives in this race if we don't get our buddy Sean in. Okay, just in terms of stepping up one level to the state elections, the primary looked very solidly for the state of California in terms of the primary results. Democrats are just dominating left and right, up and down, except for the controller's office. We're a bit behind. Lonnie Chen, the Republican, is 36.9, and Malia Cohen is the Democrat at 22.7. And all of the other races, governor, lieutenant governor, secretary of state, treasurer, attorney general, Alex Padilla for the full and partial Senate terms. Those are all looking solidly for the Democrats. We do have two contested elections that are close in the general. That will be for controller, as I mentioned, and also superintendent of public instruction. Thurman is ahead, but we do have some challengers. Okay, I think that wraps it up. Let's move forward to some training in terms of dealing with these elections, because we have a lot of skilled, very knowledgeable people here in this club, and we want to be able to, for us newbies that are getting onto the campaign trail for the first time, and for some of us who may have forgotten or been not so motivated, let's have some training first by our good buddy John Rowe on phone banking. John, can you give us a few minutes about how we can do the phone banking that you know well and specialize in?
Well, thank you, Ron. And thank you for having me, because phone banking is a good, but I believe dying tool in our toolbox, namely because of social media, but you can still make a difference. To give you a little bit about myself, I'm a retired real estate broker from 30 odd years, and telemarketing is part of what we do. And what earned me the 2009 award as the Political Activist of the Year from the Contra Costa Labor Council, because the phone bank I headed in East County obtained 8,000 more votes than forecasted. So I always thank my crew too, and they even come up to me years later and thank me for what I taught them. Because phone banking is all about results. And I'm going to show you how you can get those results like I did in 08. First of all, you get your phone bank team together. You tell them who you are. You have them tell everybody else who they are. Get them to warm up to each other. You kind of give them the ground rules, breaks, dinner. You know, that's the kind of stuff, you know, the housekeeping stuff. Then you hand out the scripts and you give them time to read them over first. Then you have them practice 2-on-2 with going back and forth on reading the scripts. And I do recommend people stay on script. You might want to change one adjective for another, but it's usually not good to get off a script, and Democrats have a real issue with that. The other skills that they need as a phone banker, and this goes true for any telemarketer, is always have a smile. It comes through. People hear it. You've got to speak in a positive, confident, friendly tone of voice. They need to think they're talking to their best friend and make that person feel they're having a conversation with their best friend. Because people can tell when some guy's just sitting there reading a script. Hi there, I'm calling tonight to see if you would vote for Tom Brown. Yes or no? Thank you. That doesn't get anybody up and going. So be sure that your crew comes across positively, confidently, and always have that smile. And then you want to do a debrief afterwards just to see how everybody's, phone calling went. That's important because maybe somebody hooked on to a little bit different wording that works. You've got to be open to your crew's suggestion. Other than that, phone banking can be useful. It's still a reasonable tool to employ, along with mailing. Canvassing works. The most effective technique I've ever heard of came out of the Labor Fed, and that is face-to-face. That did it at, I think, a 60% plus rate for votes. So that's what I can tell you about phone banking. It is an art, but it's also a science. I don't do in the mechanical end of it. I'm a sales and marketing guy. If you get your pitch right, you get positive results. You get it wrong, you may get some results, but nothing out of the ordinary. So thank you for your time.
Wonderful, John. Yeah, wisdom of the ages. Good stuff. Okay.
Thank you, Ron.
All right. So we can do this with our smartphones, and we can do it alone at home.
Yeah.
We can do it in groups in an office. And generally, about how long do you think people can actually do it without needing to break or stop?
Well, the normal phone call will typically last about 2 minutes, maybe 3. You don't want to get a Republican on the phone and keep talking to them for 10 minutes. Just thank them for their time and move on to the next one. And this is a numbers game.
Okay, and a person can generally do this well for an hour or two and then needs a break?
I'd recommend about a half hour because if you really, but it depends on your call volume. Are you getting a lot of connections or you're getting a lot of nobody picks up? If you get a lot of don't pick up, then your break can go longer.
Okay. And typically the numbers and the people that you get will be distributed off of a computer list by some supervisor.
Yeah, there's plenty of software out nowadays that can take you everywhere from, who you're calling, their name, their address, their registration, how often they vote. And you can do it all off your cell phone. Those are great. And those can work fine at home. They can work fine in a group setting.
So this is essentially a no-cost thing, and it doesn't wear out the soles of your shoes either.
No. And what was I just thinking about mentioning?
John?
In labor, we work off a strictly labor phone call list because we only call other union members.
Okay.
Now, naturally for us, we call off the Democratic Party rolls. So go out there and get them, guys. I mean, it's a vast field, and it feels so good to be able to have some results from our efforts. So
yeah, thank you so much, John. Very well done. Sharon?
Yeah, can John demonstrate, pretend he's calling somebody?
Okay. Boy, I haven't really thought about doing that, Sharon, but hello, is this Sharon?
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. Well, Sharon, this is John Rowe, and I'm calling on behalf of Congressman Swilwell. He's up for re-election. And are you familiar with him?
Yes, I am.
Great. How do you feel about him as being re-elected?
I have very positive feelings about him.
Great. Then can I mark you down as being a yes vote in favor of the congressman?
Of course.
Then don't forget to tell your friends and family, and thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Okay.
You're welcome.
John, when we were planning this out earlier in the week, one of the things we said was that the club wouldn't be setting up our own phone banks.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
What we heard earlier from Cheryl from the Harder campaign was that they will probably be setting up phone banks, and those phone banks could be phone bank from home or physically at some place. I know I've done many phone banks at the IBEW and various campaign offices. And those are what you were describing earlier, call those team phone bankings, where you're picking up the energy from the other people there, and that's important for our members. And we invited somebody from Swalwell's campaign down here tonight, but apparently he couldn't make it, and I didn't invite him till a couple of days ago. But Swalwell has something called the Remedy PAC, and they are making calls for Democratic candidates all over the country. So he's looking for what I'll call hotspots where we can do some real good, and hopefully we'll get our membership in touch with Swalwell's Remedy PAC. I'm pretty sure that Sean Kumagai is going to have phone banking, and Josh Harder will have phone banking. And those are the campaigns that we know for sure that we ought to get involved with. Anyway, I said my piece. It looks like Linda Knapp had something to say.
Oh, thank you, Ellis, for that comment earlier, that about ringing the bell. That's got to be the oldest boiler room technique in the world. It's always been around, but yeah, you get a hit, you get a positive, you ring the bell. That way everybody knows and they can re-energize off of just that.
Yeah, I just put it in chat. I'm a veteran phone banker too. I've been doing it for years. I'm kind of burnt out on it actually. But yeah, I did phone banking for Sean and Pamela. They both have their own separate phone banks. And Swing Left is now coordinating with the Bay Area Coalition doing phone banking for candidates in Arizona and Nevada.
So maybe you can get that Swing Left contact information for the rest of us, and we can put it in some newsletter or something that we send out, so the other club members will know about that.
Well, if not from me, Kyoko has it.
Oh, okay. So I can get a hold of Kyoko and.
Yeah, she'd be happy to have additional volunteers.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, good stuff on phone banking. Let's move on to the second topic in terms of our election skills session. And this will be from Ellis Goldberg, and this will be on tabling. Ellis?
Oh, thank you, Ron. In the past, we've been tabling at places, primarily the Pleasanton Farmers Market on Saturday mornings, usually from 9 to noon. But in the past, we've also tabled in Livermore at a park, Edison Park, Kodak Park. I forget the name of it.
Carnegie.
What's it called?
Carnegie.
Carnegie. Okay.
Close.
Close. Close, no cigar. And what we need when we're tabling, just for starters, in fact, it's absolutely essential for starters, we need the reason to be there. And although there are certain ballot measures that have been very important and maybe get people out to do tabling, it's mostly for candidates. And as I pointed out earlier, Sean Kumagai is our local candidate, where we have a chance to make an easier physical presence. His district, or AD20, I should say, is partly in Dublin and in Pleasanton on the west side of town, and goes west from there into, I believe, Castro Valley, Hayward, and further into Alameda County. So if we were going to do phone banking, we might consider doing it in places where we will actually have voters who could vote for Sean Kumagai. So that's our first consideration. You see, I had an outline here. I would get it in front of me.
Ellis?
Well, no, we're going to talk about what it is. I just got to get to the right page.
If somebody
Okay.
is up to you.
So that's the.
We lost your audio. Ellis and Sharon, we lost your audio.
With it, because as John just said, the most effective way of getting to voters with a maybe a 60% hit rate, that is, if you encounter a voter who hasn't decided and you talk to them, 60% of them you could probably go to your direction. But you have to know what you're talking about. You have to know what the spiel is for the particular candidate, why they should vote for them, why they should trust them. And trust is the major issue. It used to be that we're asking elected officials to spend our tax dollars wisely. But that paradigm has changed. It's still that we want them to spend our tax dollars wisely, but now we want them to make wise decisions that can be affecting our health and our safety, and even life and death decisions, as we saw through this COVID pandemic, that elected officials are frequently making decisions that are life and death decisions. So we have to be ready to convince voters that our candidates, let's say Sean Kumagai, is a good choice for making those life and death decisions. We have to know what the spiel is. The second thing is, just a second, I have my outline. Literature. We have to have a supply of literature, and in fact is, a few years ago we bought plastic stands to put pieces of paper in that we'd have on our table when we were tabling, so that when a voter comes by and we engage them in some conversation, we have something to hand to them. It'll be campaign literature from the candidates or about the ballot measures. It could be lists of candidates that the clubs endorsed. And it could also be an invitation to our summer barbecue, our next meeting, meetings of other clubs. So we give the voter that's stopping by an opportunity to have an impact themselves. And in fact, you know, John just did this rehearsal of a phone bank with my wife. But if you come across a voter who says, yeah, I'm very inclined to vote for Eric Swalwell, well, the next question is, would you like a lawn sign for Swalwell for your front yard? And the question after that is, would you like to get involved in Swalwell's campaign? So anytime that you've got your hook into a fish, you better try to get everything you can out of that, because these voters are few and far between.
Why don't you give an example?
So,
somebody
right, so people would come by and they'd say, I'm new in the area, I don't know who to vote for, and you run down your your candidates and what the qualifications are. And it turns out that maybe they're experienced in politics, but they're new in the area, and you invite them to our club barbecue or our next meeting, and you say, well, not only am I telling you about this candidate, but the candidate's going to be at our next meeting. And that's what gets people to come and join the Tri-Valley Democratic Club, is the chance to be engaged, those opportunities. So we have to make those opportunities apparent. What else do we have to do in order to get the tabling done? We have to select a site, as I mentioned earlier. So finding the right farmer's market, or I've been in front of Safeway stores with ironing boards, registering voters. We don't do that anymore. We need people to man the tables. So you need somebody who basically does the human resources part of the job. Recruiting people to come to the tables would be from our membership, and actually staffing the tables and making sure you have everything on schedule. And what you want is 2 or maybe 3 people at the table. And one of the reasons for that is that every once in a while we get a heckler. And the strategy is walk away from the table with the heckler. Get them away from the table and leave your other person at the table to talk to people who are going to get to vote for whatever you want. But get the heckler out of there. You need at least 2 people. And sometimes if you got a bunch of hecklers, it's better to have 3 people there. And we've had 2 and 3 people at those tables, and this has worked out. So we try to defuse any confrontation and don't get into an argument with the people, but just gently walk them away and try to end the conversation. But don't let them block up the front of your table, which is what they frequently try to do. What else do we have to do there? Logistics. You obviously need a table for tabling. You need chairs for tabling. I used to bring an umbrella with me that I would attach to the table, a big beach umbrella. And I actually had what I'll call a fishing lure. What I would do is I would print political cartoons. And I remember doing this when Trump was running against Hillary, and put them in plastic sleeves and hang them off the spokes of the umbrella. So we had these floating cartoons, and there was a cartoon on each side of the sleeve, and people would come by just to read the cartoons. And once they come by and they read the cartoons, maybe they smile, maybe they disapprove of it, but it's kind of a qualifier, and it's also an icebreaker in that if they come over and they look at the cartoons, you say something, have you voted yet? Have you decided who you're going to vote for? Questions like that, and you engage them, and you get them talking first, and see where they're coming from first, try to figure out what their issue is, what they want to talk about, and then try to entice them to come to one of our meetings, vote for our candidate, campaign for our candidate, those type of things.
Bribe them?
Yeah, there's bribe them. Sometimes we have candy there. and that certainly works with kids. And I happen to have 2 button machines. And we frequently would have buttons on the table. This is particularly effective during presidential campaigns. When we were campaigning for Obama, people were handing us money hand over fist, which we were raising for our UDC, our PAC, that was paying for our campaign headquarters and things like that. But that's yet another thing aside from campaign literature. It's generally called swag. and we have that at the tables. And then there's the last thing, which is hooking up with other groups. You heard mention of Kyoko. She's with a number of groups, Tri-Valley, 4 Hour Revolution, and other groups. And sometimes we want to have them at our table. And they're pushing for a particular agenda item, maybe a ballot measure, maybe they're collecting signatures on a petition. And having them brings people into your store, although it certainly isn't a store. It's just a table on a street corner or in a park, but it's additional enticement for people to come by. So that's pretty much the spiel on tabling. Obviously, we're going to need a bunch of people to do that. I used to do that, and 3 years ago, I lost vision in this eye and no longer drive. And we're going to need a whole bunch of people who are interested in doing tabling. So I'm still willing to take the lead on this, but we need people to do those other jobs that I was just talking about. So if you're interested in it, I think most of you have my contact information. Please get back to me. And it's summertime, it's time for tabling. Typically, it's a Saturday morning thing. More recently, I've been tabling in Danville with the San Ramon Valley Dems and Rick Adler, who's also a member of this club, and we were tabling for Dinah Becton and the candidates in Contra Costa.
Wonderful, Ellis. This is great. You know, such good detail and such really fine, good knowledge. We appreciate that. Let's see if we can move on. Is Sarah here to talk about social media presentations?
I believe Sarah's out ill today.
Okay.
So she will not be able to attend.
Okay.
Ron, I lost internet connection. I lost you for the last 30 seconds.
Okay, so we were asking if Sarah was going to make a presentation on social media. We also have a need for someone to talk on briefly on precinct walking and someone on contacting the standard print media, such as letters to the editor. Did you have any thing you would like to add on either of those, Ellis?
Well, I've done both of them. First of all, on precinct walking, the latest thing is to have something called PDI, which is a phone application. And the Contra Costa Democratic Party has somebody, Kathleen Van Winkle, who deals with it for Contra Costa. And what I did was I downloaded PDI onto my phone, and she assigned me a precinct, which was our precinct, Sharon and my precinct. And a list comes up on the phone, and it's for the various streets in my precinct. And we would decide which streets we would walk on any particular day. We were able to drop door hangers at 283 houses, I think over about 4 or 5 days, where we went out for about an hour to 2 hours at a clip. And we were able to get to all of those houses. And it was just houses with Democrats, registered Democrats there. And in this case, it was just the slate card that said, these are the officially endorsed candidates of Contra Costa County. Now, I've asked Igor about this. Igor is the chair of the Alameda County Central Committee, and I don't know of any such thing there. But individual campaigns will have their walk lists. That's what PDI is basically in my phone, which is a walk list that says, these are the houses that you should visit. And of course, they tell you in the names of the people there, but if you're not going to ring the doorbell, which we didn't have time to do with 283 houses, you don't even need the names. And I know that in San Ramon, Brody Hilp at the San Ramon Valley Dems got 15 people to walk and leave literature at 100 houses each using the same PDI. So that's what I could tell you about precinct walking, that it pays off. And right now we're working on the numbers to see how well we did versus precincts that didn't get walked.
And I did a precinct walking for Gavin on the recall. I dropped literature at all the houses.
Yeah, so we've had precinct walking going on for I don't know how long. It used to be that we would print sheets of paper, and I'd be sitting in the car with 50 sheets of paper because there's about 50 different streets in our precinct, maybe fewer, maybe 30 or 40. And that's a typical precinct. And if you live in the part of town that Sean Kumagai is running in, you ought to think about getting your own precinct, that is the precinct where you live, and that makes it more convenient. And you go out at your leisure, that is when you have an hour or two that you want to dedicate to walking your precinct, you do that.
Okay, that's really wonderful. That's good wisdom on precinct walking. And I think what we would like to do is to have a short presentation on contacting the regular print and TV and other media. Ellis, did you have some thoughts on that also?
Well, I think we all read the paper or some other media. Maybe we read the Patch or something like that. The best thing to do is what I call piggybacking. So let's say the East Bay Times has just written an article about the DA's race. And they said various things. Maybe they backed your candidate, or maybe they backed the other candidate. But at that point, you would say, in response to your editorial about the DA's race, maybe you'll put in the opinion why I disagree with you or why I agree with you. Another form of piggybacking is somebody says something in a letter to the editor, and you respond to that letter to the editor. So it's piggybacking on that. And similarly, you say, I agree with Sharon, or I disagree with Sharon, and this is why, and you try to make your point. Now, each of the publications has limitations as to how many words to put in it. And what I usually do is write all of my thoughts as to how I might put this rebuttal or this agreement. And then I start cutting out stuff that's extra and bringing it down to the size that they like. The second thing is give them a headline. Otherwise, they will supply the headline and it won't look as good as yours. And the headline is something that grabs the reader and says, read this. The headline may be a little bit confusing, but a little bit confusing can be enticing. So think about enticing your headline. The other thing is write the letter, write the headline, don't send it in, sleep on it, and read it the next day. And see if you can make it better.
Okay. Tell the club what you would do when we had an important guest coming to our club, how you would contact the media.
Oh, well, that's another thing. That isn't a letter to the editor, but the idea is if we have somebody coming to the club to speak,
like Eric or somebody.
like Eric or Rebecca, or, well, you know who we have coming to the club,
Mark.
And we invite the media there, well, all the better. Sometimes we have endorsements. We did endorsements. We talked about that earlier. And what I did was I wrote a press release for both Cheryl and Sean Kumagai and sent it to the media. And now, thanks to Ron's efforts and to Jackie's efforts, we have our meeting on Zoom and on YouTube. So I can tell an editor, this is why we endorse Sean Kumagai, and you can hear what he had to say, and in fact, his two opponents, what they had to say before we did our endorsement vote.
Also,
so the editor can't say, I'm sorry I missed that meeting. Well, you didn't. You can go to YouTube.
Also, we have club members that write the Livermore Independent.
Yeah, well.
And I call them up and tell them what our meeting's about.
Well, the Livermore Independent is probably the friendliest publication to the club because Joan Zappella, who owns the Independent, is a member of our club.
Right.
And she has been for a long time. So she's more inclined to put our press release into an article.
And she does
where she'll quote the press release and embellish it and
whatever.
So she's a good one, but also locally, the Pleasanton Weekly. And then there's the Patch, which is an online publication from various cities. So like there's a Dublin Patch and a Pleasanton and a Livermore and a San Ramon and Danville and so forth. And each one of those has their own rules for publication. And before you send out any kind of written statement to them, you should look over their rules, make sure you follow their rules. And if it's a good letter, they'll publish it.
Okay, this is wonderful information. This is great training for us. And this gives us a better general knowledge about how to get out our opinions and how to get out our endorsements. And the judgments that we make from our years of understanding people and politics are valuable. And not just sharing them with the club, but sharing them with people in general is important. Now, I have one final request, and that is, we do have one other marketing specialist. Ellis is a wonderful marketing specialist. And we do have another one. Our latest member of our executive board, Richard Lee, is also a marketing specialist with great skills and some digital communication knowledge. Richard, do you have any ideas about how to contact social media in terms of getting out our ideas, our opinions, our endorsements, etc.?
That's a good question. I think Ellis covered it pretty well. I will just say as a disclaimer, my specialty in marketing is more so in digital paid media and advertising, more so than social media particularly, although I do have a little bit of background in there. I would say, I mean, the message is important, the platform is important, but also who you're talking to is important. So knowing how to tailor your message to the people that you know, your family, your friends, and making sure that, you know, whatever you're posting on social media, whatever you're trying to get people to engage in, keep in mind the audience, because it's very different from, you know, saying you want to reach the general population versus saying you want to reach your local family and friends and get them out to vote in the polls or something like that. I think Alice covered everything pretty well.
Do you have any recommendation if we're to post some of these political statements and opinions as to which of the social media do you think would be most appropriate? Is that Facebook, Instagram, etc.? We know we don't want to get into battles on Twitter.
I'm sorry, Ron, could you repeat the question?
Do you have any recommendation in terms of which social media might be good platforms for us to get out some of our messages? Maybe those relating to Sean Kumagai, for example. Would that be Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, maybe not Twitter, etc.? Just in terms of a general overview for us who are sort of neophytes in social media.
Well, I will say the ones that you've listed, Ron, all have pretty different audiences. Twitter is obviously a really good one if you're trying to target specifically people active in politics, that's electeds, that's people like us, that could also be a younger audience. Facebook is usually, I think, the general good to go. I know I don't want to say it's a dying platform, but it sort of is. But that's where folks who are usually older in age, who are more politically aware, more politically engaged, that's where they tend to be. That's also probably the most established platform. Like TikTok, for example, is quite new. I mean, a lot of folks are still trying to figure out how to appropriately message on TikTok. TikTok's also very strict in terms of what it allows for political messaging. But I think different audiences exist on the different platforms. The younger audiences typically are on TikTok as well as on Instagram. Snapchat is sort of dying as well. I don't think a lot of us use Snapchat anyways. But there are a variety of ways we can go about it. It depends on the messaging, it depends on what we're trying to do, and it depends on who we're trying to talk to. I see Robin has her hand up.
Hey. Could I share a point about LinkedIn?
Yes.
Would it be okay if I shared my screen and I showed you all something?
Sure.
I'll keep it to 60 seconds. I'm disabled. I actually can't. It says host disabled participants. So, so some of the people who get involved with the Dem Club come at this from being business people. So for example, I've been in business for 40 years. Good. I have about 18,000 real business relationships. And I keep a good chunk of them in LinkedIn. And on LinkedIn, I can search by zip code, I can search by district. So what I do is I identify groups of 1,000. And my goal, believe it or not, is to find people who are not intending to vote and to convince them that something in their job would be suitable to the candidate that we would like them to vote for. So for example, I'm working on Ohio. I have about 1,000 people in Ohio that I know because of business connections. And I'm looking at Tim Ryan, and I'm looking at what his views are on bringing manufacturing, in particular chip manufacturing, back to his district. So what I do is and I did this with the Harris campaign. I met with Steve Vo, looked at business connections here in the East Bay, looked at Kamala Harris's particular interests, for example, the cyberbullying law, and then keyed in on business relationships. Now, the last thing I will tell you is I'm the CEO of my company. So for me, as long as I disclose, I don't have a conflict. But I'm also the president of the ISC Squared East Bay board. So I file permission every year with my board, and I say, I will not solicit our membership, but I want you to give me in writing that you're not opposed to the fact that I wear my For the People sweatshirt. And if somebody wants to speak to me about issues in cybersecurity, that I will freely speak about issues affecting cybersecurity. And sometimes I'll bring out the book from Eric Swalwell, Endgame. Sometimes I'll start to speak about particular things that are going on in Congress that affect the laws in cybersecurity. But I just want to share with you that if somebody comes to me and they say, we want to attract business interest for this candidate in this location, see, that's a great conversation to have with me, because then I'll come back and I'll say, well, here are businesses and here are 1,000 people. Now, here's the amazing thing. I only target getting 8 people who were not planning to vote to join our Democratic ticket. If I can get 8 people in a state who weren't going to vote, believe it or not, if everybody just said, okay, I'm going to get 8 people who were not going to vote, we would own the country. Because most of the stuff we do doesn't actually impact the numbers at a very high amount. So let's say you're phone banking, you'll probably dial 1,000 times a year. I do about 1,000 calls a year. And if you can get to 10% conversations, it's actually a very effective rate. And if you can turn 3%, that's a very effective rate. So just thank you for your time. I wanted to just drop this into people's consciousness that business people find communities via LinkedIn. And
wonderful, Robin. And I feel that you have more to offer us in terms of contacting business people and social media.
I do. And in fact, you don't have to ask me. I do it anyway. I have about 2,000 people in the East Bay. And what I did for the last election was I had regular meetups with Stephen Vo, who is part of the legal leaders in the Kamala Harris campaign.
Good.
We identified a way to email all of them, and I got about 2,500 letters out and 1,300 opened.
You know what I would like is to have you continue to educate us on this for the next meeting. So if you can do maybe a 10-minute presentation for us, we'll see if Richard has something to add, and maybe Sarah will be able to make this meeting next month also. So we would like to have the 3 of you make a presentation in terms of how to utilize social media in general in order to get our message and promote our candidates.
I think
so
I'd like to spend 10 minutes on LinkedIn. 10
minutes?
I'll spend 10 minutes on LinkedIn. I really want to talk to you guys about how to use LinkedIn.
That sounds great.
And to anybody in the organization, here's my Twitter handle.
Okay.
And I keep 3,500 Democrats very tightly connected.
Wow.
I do not have anybody that isn't pretty much a secured voter or somebody who will influence the vote.
Robin, great to have you as a resource, and we're going to want to utilize
well,
you more.
I just want to explain to you what the limits are for me being a resource. I'm actively the president of my own company and actively the president of ISC Squared.
Cool.
I have to be very specific. I have to list things with my partners and with my board.
Okay.
And so what I do is I identify something that I'm doing. I'm doing work for Ohio.
Okay.
The Ryan race. But the thing is for us, using Mobilize and using the resources that you guys just named that's exactly what we're supposed to do. That's the legal and correct thing to do.
Good. We need to move on, Robin.
Business people, you can do
we need to move on here. We're going to go ahead and have a treasurer's report from Alan. We'll get into our regular reports. This will be the end of our training session. We'll pick more training up next month. If we can have Alan with us for a quick treasurer's report.
I'm here.
Great.
We started out the month with $3,639.38. We had income of $70 from dues. Expenses were $2.64 in credit card fees.
Okay.
Also, we made a $500 donation to Cheryl Cook Callio's campaign, and she sent us if you can see it, a thank you card, which is nice. And that leaves us with a total of $3,302.62. Our membership is 117, which
Yay.
compares just about the same as last year.
That's good. Well, thank you, Alan. Okay, Central Committee updates from Jackie, Tara, and Rankle, our wonderful secretary.
Before we move from the treasurer's report,
sure.
We heard that Isidra, did I pronounce it right, is trying to retire some of the debt in her campaign. And what I would like to do is propose sending her campaign $200, and similarly the Harder campaign, which came to us tonight, and they need dollars and door knockers, and we should send them $200 also. Will somebody second my motion to send $400
I'll second it.
to the campaign? Alan, thank you.
Good. Let's take a vote then. Okay, $200 to the Ysenio Sanchez campaign for Sheriff of Alameda County, and $200 to the second one was
Josh Harder.
Josh Harder. Okay, an important House seat. All those. Let's take a voice vote. Would this be appropriate, Jackie? Voice vote.
Just a quick question: do we still have quorum for a vote? Alice, what's the percentage?
It says 14 participants, and Sharon and I are a double, and I don't know who else is here. For,
11, 12, 13, 14. I believe we have quorum. Go ahead.
Yeah, it looks like we have quorum.
All right,
Thank
let's
you.
take a voice vote. All those in favor of the $400 allocation split between the two campaigns, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All those abstaining?
I abstain.
Okay, one or
Good
two
job.
abstentions, and the vote passes. So if we could have Alan send to those campaigns the appropriate amounts, checks for $200 each, or whatever way you send the money. Okay, good idea, Ellis. All right, let's move to Jackie and the Central Committee updates.
Okay, I'm not going to go through all the election results. We already did that. The Central Committee, in their work to communicate to these various folks, besides the canvassing and tabling and all of those things, which we don't have numbers on, they texted over 91,000 texts to various combinations of voters.
Wow.
So we really had a very good result. In drilling down into Alameda County, Livermore still, is going very, very conservative. So we still have a lot of work to do in the far east counties of Alameda. We saw some really good results in Dublin, by the way, in parts of Pleasanton, and also Springtown in Livermore. So that was encouraging. But it looks like I have my work cut out for me here in Livermore. The other thing that's coming up is there will be a picnic. And this is for everybody. This is not just for Central Committee members. This picnic is designed to get other groups engaged and get club memberships to meet each other. So I think this is a really good opportunity to meet people in Alameda County, people working in other parts of the county, other assembly districts. So I think it would be fun. And I think I would encourage all of our members to try to attend if possible. It's going to be at San Felipe Community Park in Hayward on July 30th. It's 12 to 5. Tickets are $30 for individuals, $50 for family. Senior tickets, and that's 65 and over, or students 14 to 18, it's discounted at $20. And this is going to help sponsor events and raise money for other activities from the Alameda Central Committee. And there's going to be games. So imagine maybe the Wellstone Democratic Club doing some sack races with Tri-Valley Dems. So I will send out all the information in an email to the entire club about that.
And Ron and his band is playing at the club at that picnic.
Really?
Yep.
Ron, did you sign up for that?
I am volunteering my band, paying their expenses out of my pocket, and we're going to add some fun and good music to the event.
And I am
another reason for our members to go.
And I am going, Igor, I was talking to emailing Igor, and we're going to invite the DPCCC also.
That's the Contra Costa Central Committee.
Oh, that's great. And thanks to Sharon for hooking me up with them and getting the music arranged. Our hospitality chief is being very hospitable.
That was easy.
All right. The other news from the committee is members have been signing up for various breakout committees. I'm on the communications committee as well as the political action committee again. So everybody has been assigned a committee seat. So no sitting on our laurels. They have assigned everybody work. And that's it from the Central Committee. I posted our minutes from last club meeting. I know people haven't had a chance to approve them. Van took a look at them, didn't see anything. It is posted in the chat.
I reviewed them and found them to be wonderful as usual.
Beautiful.
No mistakes.
So can I get a motion to approve them pending? I mean, you guys find anything else that needs to be corrected?
I read them also, and I move to accept the minutes.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Thank you, Sharon.
Okay. We've had a first and a second, and let's hear those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Those abstaining? Motion passes unanimously. Wonderful. Okay, from our standing committees, do we have someone here from our committee chairs that wants to give us an update on what's going on in their committees? We don't have Van, we don't have Sarah, we don't have most of the chairs. Okay, all right. Any chairs out there? Okay. Oh,
And
that's
Ron,
right.
just as a reminder, we are at 9:02 now. So just a reminder
Okay,
of our time.
5 minutes away from being done. Let's hear from the hospitality committee, Sharon.
Hi, I'm still in a quandary as to whether we'll have a picnic this year. I want to see what the what some of the picnics, some of the clubs are doing as far as their picnics going. Some of them are having sandwiches. Some of them are being catered. I want to check that out. Because our picnics usually, we barbecue and then people bring side dishes and desserts. So I want to check out what other people are doing.
Okay, so we're thinking end of July, middle of August, somewhere's around that time?
I don't know yet. Let's see what the other clubs are doing and how they handle it.
Okay, well, that sounds good. Okay, and that's pretty much all we need to go through for the hospitality committee. Let's have a report from Richard Lee, our newest executive board member, the vice president. Richard, did you want to give us a little update, maybe a description of who you are for those of us who are not real familiar with us, and what you've done for the TVDC so far, and what you would have in mind in the future?
Sure, thanks, Ron. Well, for the sake of time, I'll just keep it short. The lowdown on me is that I have been in this club for, I think, roughly a year at this point. I grew up in the South Bay in San Jose, was where my upbringing was. And then my family moved out to Dublin while I was in college. So my family has been living here officially for 4.5 years. But since graduating from college, I've been living here permanently, roughly a year and a half to 2 years. Professionally, my background's sort of in campaign politics. I also do a little bit of digital work, currently in paid media. So really excited to help out, the Tri-Valley Downs in terms of what I can contribute digitally, in terms of social media and all of that. So in that sense, I work, I would say, pretty closely with Sarah, with all of our comms work. I've also recently been working with Jackie, who's done a fantastic job of going through AB 1416, which is the Ballot Disclose Act, which I can't remember if our club has endorsed yet, but I wouldn't be surprised if we have. But there's some work on that. And going forward, just making sure whatever needs to be done is getting done, and wherever I can plug myself, I'm happy to assist.
That's wonderful. Thank you. And if you want to, this couldn't be a regular feature, the Vice President's report, since we have a strong Vice President. And like I said earlier, the Vice Presidential shoes to fill are relatively small. And Ella said like ballet slippers. Well, that's it. My shoes are relatively small, but we do appreciate your input, and it sounds like you're doing good work, and we're looking forward to more. Any other announcements that we have, or new business that people want to discuss or bring up or have in the next meeting?
There was a report about the Contra Costa Central Committee and what's going on there, and there's something very important that went on there. The Diablo Valley Democratic Club seems to have, in my words, disintegrated before our eyes.
Bummer.
And what happened was they had a vote on endorsing one of 4 candidates for the Supervisor District 4 that I described earlier: Walnut Creek, Concord, Clayton, that area. And there was a dispute there, and almost name calling between various members of the club. And at the next meeting, the June meeting, which was earlier this month, the current executive board there said that they're not running again, except for one member who I believe is the treasurer there, Kathleen Van Winkle, but all of the other executive board members said that they're not running, and nobody in the club raised their hand to run for office. So they decided to, I'm quoting, go dark. That is, not have club meetings, and right now it's unclear as to whether anybody is going to take the reins of that club. Sharon and I were not about to do that because, you know, we're involved with another club, this one.
But if you know of somebody that wants to be, you know, have an executive position, and the club usually draws from members in Walnut Creek and Concord, that area.
Right, so they're looking for new leadership, but it should be a lesson to us also that divisive behavior can result in the club crumbling. Now, this club is over 60 years old. We had somebody attending one of our seasonal parties whose husband was president of this club during the Kennedy campaign. That was 1960. So this club is at least since 1960 and probably somewhat older than that. And we've got members who are engaged here and are interested in making a political impact. And I think we have to be very conscious of, although we may not agree on candidates, let's not make it personal and let's not make it divisive, and keep the club together. And remember that divisiveness is what the Republicans are trying to use to take over this country. And if they divide Democrats, we're screwed. So keep that in mind and keep that object lesson in front of you. And maybe the Diablo Valley Club can be revived, or somebody can come along and take over the club. But Sharon and I are charter members of that club. When they first applied for charter in Contra Costa, our names were amongst the 20 members that they needed in Contra Costa County. So we've been through this the entire life of the Diablo Valley Democratic Club. And I'm sorry to say it looks like that club may be gone.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for that update. We are running at 9 minutes past 9 o'clock.
Sorry about that.
Thank everybody for their contributions and their attendance of the meeting. We had some really good input, some great training, and I was very pleased with the meeting tonight. So we'll see you all next meeting. Till then.
President Lorenz, may I just end the meeting with, because this is is this the first Juneteenth national holiday?
Right.
Actually get it off?
Yes, please speak to that.
So, yeah, so Juneteenth, it's here to stay. And we're glad that we have a federal holiday now honoring the end of slavery. So I'd like to end on that note.
That's wonderful. Okay, good night all.
Thank you.
Bye.